Thanks. Thanks very much. I should have said good afternoon. Indeed, the EFF welcomes and commends the South African Human Rights Commission for the important initiative to hold an inquiry into racism within the advertising industry. We also welcome the invitation for the EFF to make an input on our own view, assessment, and experience in confronting racism. As a point of departure, I want to state outrightly that our focus is specifically anti-black racism that informed the apartheid and colonial systems over the centuries in South Africa. The racial oppression of black people, in particular Africans, due to the color of their skin. Put differently, a socio-economic system that uses the pigmentation of Africans as a means of their oppression, specifically to mark them out as subservient beings. The Commission's invitation to the EFF is based on our campaign against the 2020 cliques and the 2018 Asian M racist adverts. The invitation stated that the Commission solicits oral and written submissions from the EFF based on the stance taken relating to the adverts by cliques and Asian M. The invitation also states, as the inquiry's objective, to understand the causes of discrimination, the causes of discriminatory practices within the advertising sector. In the terms of reference, it indicates that the scope or its scope will not be limited to the end product that is placed on the different platforms, print, broadcast, digital, or out of home. Instead, the inquiry encompasses the very structure of the industry itself. Specifically, the terms of reference say, and I quote, the makeup of the advertising industry in South Africa, including the size of the industry, the leaders in the industry, the racial gender, and inclusivity, accommodation of persons with disabilities, makeup of leadership and employees in the industry. In this slide, it is in this slide of this rich approach that the EFF's own input will not be limited to the end product, the specific adverts that it campaigned against, but also the structure of the industry itself. In essence, our stance, for which our invitation is based against cliques and Asian M racist adverts, is inspired by our critique of the advertising industry itself as a structurally anti-black industry, the direct mirror image of corporate South Africa in general. Accordingly, our presentation will be structured in three: a short introduction of what the EFF is, what our take on anti-black racism is, and how it functions in post-apartheid South Africa, the cliques and Asian M campaign, and the anti-black racism in advertising. The EFF is the third largest political party in South Africa, representing 10% of the electorate in the South African Parliament. Formed only in July 2013, the EFF is represented in all 9 provincial legislatures and serves as official opposition in 2, Limpopo and the Northwest. In addition to this national profile, EFF also boasts over 1,000 councillors and public representatives in over 90 of municipal councils across the country. It is a radical left, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist organization in pursuit of a general mission for the total economic emancipation of all black people from the colonial capitalist bondage. We proceed from the assumption, very importantly, that political power without economic power is meaningless. We subscribe to the Marxist-Leninist Fanonian schools of thought as a way to analyze the state, imperialism, class, race, and gender contradictions in any given society. Our struggle is always rooted in mass-based, grassroots and democratic organizations and forms of organization. Anti-black racism for us is the mobilization of the pigmentation of African and non-European people as a means of their oppression, as a marker of their servitude. This racial categorization is a design of the Europeans who for over 300 years ruled Africa in accordance with pigmentations. In this view, they as Europeans are white because of the coincidence of the lighter or of their lighter pigmentation, which according to them makes them superior and destined to live off the servitude of Africans who, because of the coincidence of their darker pigmentation, are black and therefore inferior. This idiotic line is basically and obviously a pure lie. Yet it is mobilized as the explanation for why over the centuries white people are more powerful and continue to be generally more successful than other races, when in fact their success is due to their violent conquest and continued dispossession of the means of subsistence from other races. Meaning they are not successful because they are white-skinned. They are successful because they possess, through violent means over the history, the means of subsistence or the means of production. Their conquest, development, or general advancement has nothing to do with their skin color. It has everything to do with the murderous and brutal dispossession of people's means of subsistence, livestock, the land, minerals, and so on and so forth. This is clearly demonstrated also by the fact that where this power, this hold on the means of subsistence is disarticulated, like in Vietnam, their skin color becomes irrelevant. Nevertheless, they have used their attained resources and economic power to build a society using this lie, that white represents beautiful, clean, intelligent, mastery, reliable, disciplined, powerful, developed, modern, healthy, holy, godly, angelic. I mean, you could hardly paint a heaven and heavenly beings using shadows and darkness. It's about light and white. Black represents ugly, dirty, primitive, superstitious, satanic, ill-mannered, demonic, unreliable, disreputable, underdeveloped, naturally stupid, tribal, physical. Something that is trapped and takes pleasure in the body, sexually predatory, and very close to animality. This lie or falsehood attained everyday socialization through the labor, educational, religious, artistic, cultural, punitive, and judicial apparatuses, mainly to normalize and reduce and reproduce a racially exploitative society. For victims of this normalization of racial exploitation, it resulted in a permanent but impossible pursuit of whiteness. We must underscore the reality that in a racist society, all people are white, meaning the blacks, since they are not white, they are not people, and therefore are socialized to live in this zone of non-whiteness, a general state of constant pursuit of an identity you cannot attain. This whiteness, or non-whiteness for blacks, can only therefore be lived through the masks, because it is not naturally possible to attain it. This is because as a racist society, or in a racist society, you either turn white or you disappear. At the risk of disappearing, of being irrelevant, of not having access to any forms of life, blacks have to wear masks to conceal their image. That is their only way of survival. What are these masks? We have to adopt white languages in order to attain education and contribute to the body of knowledge. When we have risen to the highest levels of education and cultural achievement, according to racism, we have colonialism and apartheid to thank. All black brain surgeons, astronauts, physicists, engineers, accountants have whiteness, not their brains, to thank for their achievements. We must be grateful, which results in never questioning the status quo. To appreciate this reality, we must see how a black educational achievement is never settled. You are constantly doubted and you doubt yourself. You suspect that one day the academic institution may actually say it was a mistake to award you the degree. Like a mask, it may fall or it risks falling away and get you revealed that you are just as stupid as all blacks. Nothing is special about you because, after all, physics as a discipline or as a discursive practice, within this discursive practice, you are a permanent foreigner, a part of non-part. We also have to turn against how we look, against our hair and our skin color, against the way we were born, and adopt a general aesthetic of non-whiteness. Relax the woolly hair or shave it off. Cover it with a straight hair looking wig We have to apply lightning creams from Escamela to the recent and more advanced biogenetic techniques of skin lightening, because a dark skin is really hard to sustain in a racist society, especially for women. This is the same in sports. Think of Serena Williams, or even the Brazilian national soccer team. Or in the arts, where a painter like Nelson Magamo or opera singer like Pretty Yende have to battle against the lie that their greatness is due not to their natural talent, but to the white affirmation. They have to battle the idea that art or opera music is a white thing, a pigment affair, when it really is about the skill of painting or the vocal talent of singing. Siako Lisi, who demonstrates a great skill in rugby, proves that the sport has nothing to do with pigmentation but pure talent. Yet he still gets off the field to battle with those who seek to keep rugby about a white affair, a sport of skin color. Sia, like Hamilton, like Caster Semenya, must be grateful for being included or recognized by these whites and not question the status quo. He must feel special and not ask how come a sport about skill ends up being about skins. However, worse, if Serena Williams becomes the actual historic best of the best within a sport, which in itself will mean that she'll be at the pinnacle of all groundbreaking records within that sport, it must be a black person. This disruption will be met with actual tricks just to keep the sport under a lie that the best thing in it has to do with not skill, but skin. And all sports, top sport is white, and white people must be in it to be taken seriously or to be taken as sport at all. So blacks on their own hardly can establish any discipline or industry unless whites take it or take an interest in it. So to survive, we constantly have to seek white affirmation. This is the life of white masks that we must wear to be always accepted. What's not accepted in front of them doesn't survive. In this theater of white masks, those blacks who do not wear or succeed to put on the white mask, that is, attain white affirmation, often end up disappearing into the general necropolities we call township and homelands. They cannot be remembered. They are part of the rubble of human waste. To survive, one must take on a mask and be at the permanent mercy of the white establishment for what is good, what is smart, what is beautiful, what is modern, what is civil, and generally acceptable. To be black is therefore a conscious fight against the system of masks. It is to take on an existence that seeks to break out of this lie. It is to refuse the mask by confronting the conditions that make wearing the mask the only way to be in the world. Blackness is accepting the fact of our defeat, that we are hated and despised people, and mobilize against the usage of our black pigmentation as a tool to constantly mark us out as nothing, animal, primitive, naturally stupid, and uncultured. To mark you out as those beings that cannot be trusted with anything on their own, especially money, who must be in constant supervision. A black conscious life refuses to explain our suffering as a cause of our pigmentation. When we become conscious of our blackness, we invest our energy in attacking not each other as blacks, but the system that creates our blackness as a despisable and disposable image. That is why the criminal or corrupt officials who steal from other blacks are as idiotic as the whites who live off the exploitation of black people. Targeting other black people is idiotic but also cowardice. The black hero fights the system, the white establishment, the white value system, They do not participate in lies, reproduce lies in the form of tribalism, Afrophobia, and sexism. They know the economic power lies with the establishment. The mission or the struggle is to attain the means or the resources to re-author the image of blacks in the world. It cannot be done without the means of subsistence, without economic power. We continue to depend on those who call us and prefer us to be non-whites in order to achieve anything. The post-apartheid political order for 28 years refused to take economic power and offer a new truth about black pigmented people, black-skinned people. It has relegated the task to the same markets that were built and sustained through black exploitation, which are white-owned and dominated. The post-apartheid order believes the system will transform itself. From the RDP gear up to the NDP, as macroeconomic practices and policies, the government of the day refuses to use state power to shift property relations. They hope that white people over time will realize and accept blacks as their equals and accommodate them in the patterns of ownership. Yet 28 years have passed and ownership in the economy has not changed. Moreover, racism as an ideology survives, evolves essentially as the form of self-supervision. Mandela's magic, the Reconciliation Project, based largely on Bishop Desmond Tutu's priestly naivety, has dismally failed. Instead, it serves as a justification for the continued theater of white masks for blacks, as an ideological support for whites to continue insisting on being white. Because as long as people are white, it means others must be black. This is by way of saying there is no solving the problem of anti-black racism through an appeal to the humanity of white people. We cannot invest any more time in the hope that whites will self-transform or will use their privilege to build an unracial economic and social reality. This is naive and it is dangerous. No amount of workshops, rules and guidelines are going to end anti-black racism if they are not aimed at economic power. It is disempowering to build an entire economic policy where the victims of racism must depend on their oppressors in order to find freedom. The whole post-apartheid racial order is a black government supervising blacks to be good blacks, to wear 9 white masks. We are free only to continue being non-white. Just without the tutelage of the racist corps and military and the racial segregationist laws of separate toilets under apartheid. The post-apartheid political order keeps blacks in this disempowered position in relation to economic control and ownership. We are free to be consumers, laborers, and anything else but owners and controllers of the means of production. The whole post-apartheid racial order is about the black government supervising us towards that direction. Racial discrimination of black people, their treatment as lesser people than whites, is the modus operandi entrenched in all institutions, from finance to schooling, even in prisons. In this way, the post-apartheid order is the greatest anti-black racist achievement, where we as blacks, through our black-led political institutions, preserve the status of depending on those who despise us in order to economically support anything we desire: art, sports, education, health, everything. It is with this understanding of racism and how it functions today in society, in post-apartheid society, that we took to the streets and engaged in a radical protest against H&M and Click's racist adverts. The adverts are central. The advert or the advertisement as a craft is central to the survival of many aspects of South African society: media, sports, arts, particularly music and film industry. Through the advert, capital looks for consumers and pays billions to keep audiences fixed to its products. Black audiences are deliberately rated cheaply, they are despised, and they are easily dismissible. A white audience is expensive, sought after, and capital is willing to spend 100 times over for it, despite its small population numbers. The true racism of this industry therefore lies in how money is spent to keep black media owners a minority. In fact, as long as media is owned by blacks, it does not matter what its audience numbers are. Adverts will bill it less or ignore it with impunity. We shall demonstrate this later on. Let's go to clicks and the EFF campaign. It is a matter of public knowledge that in 2018, the retail store H&M published an advert in which a black boy was wearing a hoodie written "Coolest Monkey in the Jungle." This resulted in an international campaign against the store, which here in South Africa was led on the ground, single-handedly, by the EFF. Of course, others only satisfied themselves with tweeting or releasing statements from the comfort of their homes or offices to condemn the advert. Branches of the EFF, without waiting for the national leadership directives, staged protests inside H&M stores. The aim was to ensure that it was not business as usual, that the store was actually shutting down as a form of consequence for having insulted the dignity of black people. As the national leadership, we expressed great pride in our branches and this important insight that there must always be consequences on institutions that are engaged in anti-black racism. Accordingly, when Click's advert also published a racist ad in 2020 in which they described black hair as dry and damaged and white hair as normal, we took a nationally coordinated campaign along the same lines. We intended to shut down Clicks until they not only removed the advert and apologized, but also demonstrated practicable remorse, a form of reparations. Our protest led to the closure of over 800 Clicks outlets, both in the cities and rural South Africa, for 5 days. Clicks management tried to ignore the protest and unsuccessfully applied for a court interdict. However, in the end, they came to the table and agreed on the demands for consequences, a form of reparations for engaging in anti-black racism. Together with Unilever, they agreed to remove Transmere products from their shelves, distribute 10,000 sanitary towels to the poor, all as a demonstration of remorse. Other retail outlets like Shoprite, Pick n Pay, Dis-Chem and Makro also removed Transmere products from their shelves. The campaign raised awareness on a new and insightful approach in dealing with anti-black racism. There has to be consequences. Our view is to move our country beyond workshops and empty forgiveness sermons. A punitive approach is now long overdue. A racist must be punished with the full might of the damage of his or her racism. Portrayal of black people in adverts continues to be based on blacks as poor, as a mass, as noisy. An advert for laundry washing powder, for instance, will show black women washing with their hands, but show white women using the washing machine. Black label adverts treat the product as a product largely of black poor men, often drinking in township shebeens, or the black muscular mine or industrial worker, or a sports fan. Poverty and economic struggle are a black thing. in South Africa's advert narratives. The image of blackness. You will hardly find whites in economic squalor. In addition, black youths, in particular black males, always get the role of the criminal. Hardly will an advert addressing crime use the white person as a perpetrator. Blacks can be shown in positions of power, of course, positions of influence, in control, as whites are. But hardly will whites be shown in positions of disempowerment or disrepute like criminals or the corrupt. This is easily demonstrable in adverts dealing, for instance, with insurance, with life covers, and the curious fact of old black women always looking like domestic workers. An investigation will reveal that even black creatives fall into these stereotypes. They do so because hardly do they adopt a black conscious approach to storytelling. Things must come out as they appear. To them, the world is self-explanatory and must simply be reproduced. This is the basic attitude, for instance, of Nando's adverts. There is no need to do a critique. Tell it like it is. The standard mistake here is that appearance is often the truth. But in a racist society which is about masks, when you simply portray South Africa, are you really telling the truth of South Africa? To repeat after the appearance is to participate in the reproduction of masks, is to affirm them as normal. A critical or truth-speaking ad unveils the mask, disrupts the norms produced to keep people asleep. It provokes the mind to be more critical. In its provocative power, it seeks to undermine not the vulnerable but those in power. It does not seek to tell the world as it is, thereby making it normal. It seeks to expose the consequences of the world as it is. In as far as anti-black racism is concerned, adverts do very little to disarticulate even the simple fact that blacks are the most powerful consumer majority in this country. For instance, all the top 10 advertisement spenders in South Africa cannot sustain themselves without the black consumer. Yet a black consumer in most adverts is either always in a crowd or is being treated as though they are in equal consumption power to whites. South African adverts always seek to portray non-racialism, where they paint worlds in which whites and blacks live together in joviality. This is particularly so when it comes to alcohol, food, sports, beverages. You see blacks living side by side with whites in the advert, and we're very happy in the adverts. In the stadiums, we drink together in the parties. Even in workplaces, they portray these racially diverse workplaces of complete stability and harmony. Even young people on the streets and the campuses are racially diverse and they dance together, they dress the same. A happy rainbow nation. A racial unity that we all know does not exist. Campuses, workplaces, parties, stadiums are hardly places of racial integration. We are a racially divided society. This is a brutal fact, which adverts and many films participate in constantly masking, so that we go to sleep, we fall asleep, and never question the racial division. Finally, we must give some facts relating to how anti-racism is systematic within the industry itself. We'll give some examples in the broadcasting newspaper, out-of-home and digital or online mediums. In all of this, we seek to demonstrate that black media owners suffer the greatest anti-black racism within the industry and the Commission must initiate a process to hold those responsible accountable. You can systematically demonstrate anti-black racism within the industry against black media owners for 28 years. If the Commission engages in this exercise and does not reveal this fact and hold those accountable, it may have unwittingly contributed to putting us into sleep, so that we think the problem is being solved when it is not. Corporate South Africa takes a hands-off approach to their advertising decisions. The biggest 6 advertising agencies and media buying agencies are foreign-owned and mainly white-controlled. These are Group M, OMD, the Media Shop, Mindshare, Dentsu Agency Network, Starcom, Joe Publics, etc., to mention just the big ones, that bill 95% of the total advertising spend. Almost every corporate in South Africa outsources their media planning and buying decisions to about 6 major players. Smaller black-owned media agencies only, largely get work from government departments, which accounts for a very insignificant share. Prime Media's 94.7, 702, and KFM, as well as Kagiso Media's Jacaranda FM and East Coast Radio, for instance, take at least 60% of the total radio advertising spend in South Africa. These stations don't even collectively command 25% of South Africa's radio audience share. This is in comparison, for instance, with SABC's 18 radio stations, which collectively command over 60% of South African radio audiences. A notable factor is that 94.7, with an audience of 800,000, and only based in Johannesburg, receives much more revenue compared to Metro FM, which covers the whole country, with an audience of about 4.6 million listeners. 94.7 also outperforms Ukhozi, the world's second largest radio station, despite it being national and with an audience of over 7 million listeners. The second billing radio in South Africa is Jacaranda FM, which mainly broadcasts in Pretoria and certain parts of Limpopo and Mpumalanga, which, like 94.7, bills more revenue than any SABC station. In Johannesburg, Kaya FM has the bigger audience than 94.7 and 702. Yet 94.7 bills 3 times more than Kaya FM and 702, with less than half of Kaya FM still outperforms it. The difference is that the overwhelming majority of Kaya FM's listeners are black, regarded as cheap, regardless of their spending power. Power FM enjoys a strong following of black decision makers and black middle class, yet the station does not seem to enjoy consistent advertising support. YFM has a compelling black youth following, yet their advertising revenue is negligible compared to wide targeted competitors. Gagasi FM is KZN's largest commercial music station, yet East Coast Radio bills almost 5 times more than Igagas. The pattern is consistent. Advertising agencies and corporate clients are racist. For the SABC television, it is worse, because even government is prepared to spend more on private-owned television and radio than on the public broadcaster and other black media owners. Government spends an average of 34% of its budget on the SABC radio, which accounts for 60% of audiences in the country. They spend And they will go and spend 27% on prime media alone. 27% government advertising spending. And MultiChoice receives 49%, the lion's share. This is anti-black racism. GCIS head Pumla Williams, together with the Minister of Communication, must be held accountable for this anti-black racist decision-making which GCIS is still engaged in to this day. Government has deliberately sabotaged the SABC, mainly because it is black and must sustain a generally large black staff across the board. Within the outdoor or out-of-home market, JC de Cox, Prime Media Outdoor, Prime Media again, Network or Provantage, Ad Outpost, dominate 80% of the outdoor market. These are billboards in the main. In essence, this market is an old white boys club led by foreign-owned company JC de Cox. The South African government, which spends over 400 billion on outdoor media, again complies with racism when it comes to a billboard. In this sector, the private big spenders like Unilever, which over the last financial year spent about 2 billion on outdoor, ShopRite 1.5 billion, Outsurance, Clientele, GSK is your Eno, your Aquafresh. The famous brands are your Debonair's Pizza, Wimpy, Pick n Pay, F&B, Standard Bank are all engaged in anti-black racism when it comes to advertisement spending. They pay more for a white-owned billboard than they would do for a black-owned billboard, regardless of where such a billboard is located, Sandton or Soweto. They can go to Baragwana, Chris Hani Road, pay more for a billboard owned by white people in the same area, and pay less to a black media owner. Within print media, Sunday World, which is black owned, by the way, has a larger circulation than City Press. Yet the advertising support for City Press is 4-fold bigger than Sunday World. City Press has 86 million compared to 22 million. But Sunday World is bigger. And Sunday World, over the past 3 years, has completely rebranded as a reliable, serious news source. Adverts appearing on City Press pay more for less people than on the Sunday World, simply because of the pigmentation of who owns Sunday World. What are we saying is that these numbers demonstrate the fact that it is not about audience buying power, because there are more people in Soweto consuming Savannah, for instance, than in Bryanston. Yet a billboard in Soweto will be less expensive than the one in Bryanston. In addition, if a billboard is white-owned in Soweto, it will get more money than a billboard that is black-owned. South African companies have to take the immediate decision to spend more of their advertising spending on Ukhozi, on Mhlobo Wenene, on Metro FM, who command millions of black audiences, who are at the same time the largest consumers of any of the top 10 leading product owners like Unilever. Unilever must stop its racist spending on ads. It must be held accountable. It has to take a conscious decision to command its media spending, that 80% of it has to go to the SABC and black media owners. The same goes with its expenditure on TV, 60% of its ad spend must be on the SABC so as to make, and so is the case with Pick n Pay, with SAB, with Heineken. Government itself has to stop spending on radio 947 and Prime Media more money than it does on the SABC and the black-owned private broadcasters like Power FM. Our submission is that true racism in the advertising industry is against these black media owners, SABC, MSG, Sunday World, and many outdoor owners like Kwame, Front Seat, you name them. These actors have suffered and they continue to suffer daily because of the color of their skins and the color of the skins of their audiences. Let us put on the record once and for all, there is no single brand in South Africa today, cheap or luxury, that can claim it depends on white consumers more than it does on blacks. Not Gucci, not Rolex, not Porsche, not Moe, not Jik, not Sunlight, not Aquafresh. All big luxury brands depend on the black buying power. The same with Eno and Brooklux and all of them, including the Vaslabs, the Vascoms. Every capitalist in South Africa depends on the buying power of black people. And those black people are not only in Santi. They've got that black buying power of Moe right in Soweto. The media is aware of it. The entire industry is aware of it. That's why they've got billboards in those areas. The digital broadcasters like McG, Slikwa, Mihlali, Lasizwe have to also be compensated in line with the impact of their audiences. Online advertisement cannot discriminate them simply because they're outside the establishment and they're individual media practitioners. If Mihlali has 1 million quantifiable viewers on her YouTube channel, she must get more money than Jacaranda. She must get more money than those radio stations that have 800 viewership, for an example. So is McG, which at this stage commands millions and millions of black young people who are fixated on his content. Advertising justice has to even arrive and tread with regards to online marketing. We do not need any counseling session. Racism is alive in the advertisement industry, and I've given these examples. A general funding must be made, and all these brands be directed to take legally binding decisions to redirect their ad spend on black media owners, because the patterns at the moment are: 1, irrational; 2, they are idiotic; but thirdly, they are racist. For having practiced racism, the advertising industry since the advent of democracy, we can excuse the pre-1994 era. They must be forced to pay compensation as a demonstration of remorse, which must be directed to black communities. We have a proposal that the whole sector must be fined an amount of no less than 50 billion for racism, which can be proven. 50% of it must all go to the SABC for obvious democratic reasons. That's the public broadcaster. It has a powerful public mandate in the vibrancy of our democracy. 50% must be distributed to black-led community and television stations, for the diversity in media ownership. It must go to black female soccer development, black female filmmakers, and black female music artists. Because these female actors within the industry command audiences, and they face discrimination not because they are black, but also they face discrimination because of their gender. If we do not reach a practicable punishment, we will never resolve the racism that we see in the advertising sector. Thank you very much.